Hello, is this working? I don't think it is. It is, all right.
We're audible even without that.
I'm audible without it. Just delighted to see you all here, and thank you so much for taking the trouble to come. Sorry we're a few minutes late. We were held up at the White House where we had a very good discussion with Vice President Vance. My delegation and I are here at the end, or towards the end now, of a 5-country tour. It began on the 24th of May when we landed in New York on our way to Georgetown, Guyana. Before returning to our flight to Guyana, we made it a point to go to the 9/11 Memorial and convey very strongly our solidarity with victims of terror anywhere and everywhere. As you know, many nationalities lost lives during that particular episode. We then went to Guyana, to Panama, to Colombia, to Brazil, and finally ended up in Washington. Landing day before yesterday, and yesterday onwards we've been busy. Lots of meetings on the Hill yesterday with House and Senate representatives, and today we've begun with a session of the Council on Foreign Relations, followed by a meeting with Vice President Vance, and now with all of you. Our delegation consists of 8 people, 7 members of Parliament, and a former ambassador to the US, Ambassador Sandhu. And the 8 of us represent 8 different states in India. We represent 5 different political parties, and we represent 3 different religions. So we really do cover, in many ways, the diversity of India. But we are here with a united message. And that message is, very simply, we seek understanding for what we have been through in recent weeks, the horror of the terrorist attack on Pahalgam that killed 22 holidaymakers, and 26 holidaymakers. And then we responded as we felt we had no choice but to do, and we sought understanding and solidarity on that. And I'm very pleased to say that everywhere we went, and I could say this quite confidently, without exception, we have received both of what we sought. We have received understanding and we have received solidarity. And these 2 things is really what we came for. And we will continue in the remaining time today and tomorrow to meet others. I want to stress one thing, and then I'll be very happy to open it up for discussions. And that thing is quite simply that this is not something we would really have been wanting to spend our time on. We are a country focused on growth and development. Our focus has entirely been on the economic advances that are so essential to pull the few people who remain below the poverty line in our country out below that, and to take the rest into the developed India of our dreams. But sadly, when this kind of thing is done to us, and for very cynical motives, which I think are pretty apparent, so I won't spell them out, it was necessary for us to show that we will not allow people to cross the border and kill our citizens with impunity. That for terror strikes like this, which show all the hallmarks of meticulous planning and military-style execution, that there will be a price to pay. And that was very strongly the message that we sent. As I say, we're very happy to get back to the business of development. We wish our neighbors would do the same and focus on their own internal issues, rather than inflicting this pain on us. But if they do, we will be there to respond. And that really is very simply the message I wanted to leave you with at the start of this discussion. But we have an hour, and I'm very open to my colleagues and I are very open to any of the questions or issues on which you might want our views. Thank you. Sunanda, do you have a mic for them? Or?
Lisa Curtis is here. I would request her to ask a question.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Siddharth? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Great to see you, Dr. Tharoor, and everybody else. And first, let me express my sincere condolences and outrage about the April 22nd terrorist attack. Somebody like me who's been following U.S.-India relations for 30 years has seen this happen, similar things happen in the past, has seen many India-Pakistan crises. And of course, one feels frustrated that these kinds of things keep happening. So my question is, do you plan, and does the Indian government or parliamentarians plan to pursue any steps with the United States or the international community to pressure Pakistan to track down terrorist groups that still operate on the soil, like Beijing, like Taiba? Or do you feel like this has already been tried, and so there's really no purpose in keeping going down that path? You know, what is there any plans to try to get the international community to put more pressure on Pakistan for support to terrorism, or do you feel like that is there's no purpose in trying to go down that path again?
If I may say, and you know this because you've been following it for so long, we have tried everything for a very long time. And nothing, unfortunately, seems to have changed Pakistan's behavior. I think the most egregious example was 2008 Mumbai, not just because of the 170 victims, including a few American citizens, but also because of the extraordinary amount of detailed evidence that was collated and put together, not just by India, but by the international community. We know Western intelligence agencies had also received that, or had already made the same recording that we did of the chilling voice of the Pakistani handler giving minute-by-minute instructions to the killers while they were doing their dirty deeds. We know we have the detailed confession of the killer who was caught alive, including his address, where he lived in Pakistan, where he was trained, who trained him, everything. So it's literally, it should have been an open and shut case for a prosecution. To this day, 17 years later, nobody has been prosecuted and nobody has been punished. That is sadly a pretty clear indication of Pakistan's inability or unwillingness to do what the international community has asked of it repeatedly. On top of that, as you rightly point out, there are safe havens for these organizations, which are known, their addresses are known, their training camps are known, their more notorious preachers are known, who go around radicalizing unemployed youth and trying to bring about the kind of horrors that we've seen. Finally, the mic has come on. Were you able to hear me so far? All right. And I just wanted to say that I don't think we'll ever give up in demanding of Pakistan what is obviously the right thing to do. But I think it would be naive of us to expect them to show a greater willingness to act than they have shown in all these years of their use of terrorism. You may remember there was a brief period, ironically, which was interrupted by the Mumbai tragedy, of about 5 years when there weren't terror attacks, where in fact there was dialogue. But in that particular instance, when you had a government in power that had been elected on a platform of peace with India, that had made all the appropriate noises, and whose foreign minister was in Delhi that very day to sign an agreement on visa liberalization, that's when the attack happened. So as I say, either unable or unwilling, or both, to deal with this problem in their midst. And so certainly we have assurances from the US that they are talking to Pakistan all the time on these matters. Whether that's led anywhere is for you and me to judge from the results on the ground. Do tell us who you are. I'm not sure that all our colleagues know. We should have asked you to.
Lisa Curtis.
I mean, you and I know each other, but
yes.
just to tell my colleagues, Lisa used to be a senior official dealing with India in the previous Trump administration.
Yeah, that's right.
Aparna Pandey, Hudson Institute. Dr. Tharoor, good to see you. Good to see others. My question ties into Lisa, but slightly bigger. At the end of the day, India's primary threat and concern is China. And the China factor played into the recent conflict. So I'd like your take on how India sees the China factor in this, and how much attention should India pay on Pakistan versus paying on China? Will it detract from China, from India's bandwidth?
Yeah, I mean, let me say, this is an on-the-record conversation. I'm not going to mince my words, but we are aware that China has immense stakes in Pakistan. Their largest single project under the Belt and Road Initiative is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We also know that 81%, according to published sources, of Pakistani defense equipment, and defense may be the wrong word here, offense in many ways, is from China. The weapon systems are from China. And so China is an absolutely impossible factor to ignore in what has been our confrontation with Pakistan. Having said that, you're also aware that despite the tensions between China and India since the Galwan incident of 2020 June, early June, we have actually begun a thaw with China in September of last year, which was seemingly making good progress before this tragedy occurred, and then we saw a very different China in terms of their practical support for Pakistan, even on the Security Council and so on. So I think let me just say, and I won't go further right now, that we have no illusions about what the challenges are in our neighborhood. But I want to remind you all that India has consistently chosen a path of keeping open channels of communication even with our adversaries. We have tried as much as possible to focus on development, on growth, on trade. Our trade with China is still at record levels. It's not that we are adopting a posture of hostility, but we would be naive not to be aware of these other currents around it.